Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Zoom na Cartografia. Today, our Zoom na Cartografia lecture will be given by Professor Si and the title of her presentation is Evidential Markers and Information Structure with Special Reference to Chinese. I'm Esther Neto, an undergraduate student at the University of Campinas, Unicamp, and it's a great pleasure to introduce Professor Susan, an important name to linguistics and synthetic cartography worldwide. Professor Sifu is the dean and co-founder of the Department of Linguistics at Beijing Language and Culture University at Beijing, China. She has studied with Professor Noam Chomsky and done research in language, linguistics, and its interdisciplinarities. She has been focusing on cartography and its applications in daily language uses, especially in Chinese. She is also known among us cartographers by her important contribution on the syntax of light verbs. Professor Susan has recently organized, together with Luigi Rizzi, a book published by John Benjamins, Current Issues in Synthetic Cartography. Among many other important activities, she is the president of the International Association of Synthetic Cartographic Studies. Professor, we are very glad that you accepted our invitation, and we are sure that this talk will be of great relevance, not only for us cartographers, but also for many other linguists working on evidentiality around the world. The floor is yours. Please begin.
Thank you so much. It's Naito. I hope I didn't make a mistake in pronunciate. Thank you so much for your nice introduction. And also I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to Professor Sandra Kordazemin and also Professor Achilles Pescanedo for your kind invitation. And this is truly a great pleasure and honor for me. Thank you so much. And as arranged by the organizer, it is now time for me to share my screen, right? And then begin my talk because it's already late. Okay, now. Okay, I hope it works. Yes. Okay, it works. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone. I'm very glad to talk to you. My recent research about syntacticization of evidentiality with special reference to Chinese. So the aim of this study is to draw attention to the interrelationship between syntax and information structure by means of a number of case studies of evidentiality taken from classic Chinese written texts, Mandarin Chinese, as well as Chinese dialects. A cartographic approach is proposed to combine the study of Chinese evidentiality with the proposals for the structure of clause in Rizzi 1997 and Qingqi 1999 and 2004. So the basic structure of today's talk consists of three parts: the introduction, and also second main body of the talk will be Chinese evidentials, cartographic perspective from three aspects: classic Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and Chinese dialects, and concluding remarks. So at the first part, the questions to be asked are the followings. Firstly, is what question, and then how question, and the why question. The what question is what is evidentiality, and the how question is how does syntactic mechanisms work in terms of the information arrangement related to evidentiality. The right question is, why is the study of evidentiality important? So these three questions will be discussed with the development of the argumentation. Sorry. I think Brazilian experts are familiar with the evidentiality because it is your specialty. The typically experts define evidentiality as the information source, as Alexandra Eichenvold 2003 and Rui discussed. And except for this definition, some other linguists also consider evidentiality as a kind of grammatical category, including not only the information source, but also attitudes towards the knowledge. So this is a pretty broader sense definition, and which I'm going to take. So we have evidentiality in narrow sense, and also evidentiality in broader sense. And of course, the present study will adopt the broad sense definition and then suggest that there are subcategories in evidentiality which occupy different layers in a syntax tree and can be analyzed from a kind of cartographic perspective. And the related sub-questions to be asked are as follows: so whether all languages have evidentiality, and more specifically, whether Chinese language also has evidentiality, and whether evidentiality is an independent syntactic category. These are the related questions. About whether all languages have evidentiality or evidentials, there are different point of views also. The viewpoint one is not all languages have evidentiality as a grammatical category. Bowers discussed it in 1933, and he thinks that in some languages, evidentiality markers are obligatory, and some others are not. And Eichenvold thinks that not every language has grammatical evidentiality, although all languages might have a kind of a means to making reference to the source of information. And the viewpoint two is that actually there is a kind of a continuum from the lexical forms to the grammatical forms, like the Wiemer 2010 and also Rui 2016 quoted. So there are two extremes. One is autonomous lexical unity used to express evidentiality. The other one is a highly grammaticalized morphemes like inflections. There is a continuum. And I think I can propose a third point of view. That is my proposal. That is kind of isomorphic mapping hypothesis I suggested. The present study argues that linearly ordered autonomous lexical unities and the highly grammaticalized bound morphemes plus a set of silent elements, like suggested by Richard King, all together, working together to form up different groups, each of which is isomorphic to information structure. So I give a kind of relationship like this. So we have a universal hierarchy of the information structure represented by hierarchically arranged functional heads and their projections. This is universal, as suggested by Qingkui and Rizzi, etc. But the realization, the morphosyntactic realization of this functional hierarchy can be very different. That makes the situation complex. Okay, so a lot of misunderstandings about this correlation is due to the fact of the complex morphosyntactic realization. So now I think, for instance, maybe we have a kind of language type A, which is morphosyntactically realized by other means rather than inflections. And of course, the typical example for the study of the evidentials are those languages like a Brazilian language Paraiana, right? That is the language. That is inflections prominent language, but there are also lexical unity prominent languages. But if you look at it deeply from the underlying structure of the functional hierarchy, then we would see the universal hierarchy. And we can see the isomorphic relation between the functional structure and the complex realization of the morphosyntax. Okay, that is the basic idea I take in my research. So based on this, does Chinese also have evidentiality? The answer seems obvious. Okay, Chinese is a language known as an isolated language that lacks of inflectional morphology. Instead of using inflections, Chinese employs sentence final particles and adverbial expressions, as well as other means to convey the information that might be realized as inflections in other languages. And as early as in 1898, Chinese linguist Ma Jianzhong had already investigated the functional words conveying information related to evidentiality in Chinese. And the discussion can be found in his well-known book, Ma Shi Wen Tong, Ma's Grammar. Okay, and the very first grammar book in the history of Chinese linguistic studies, which marked the beginning of the grammatical study of Chinese grammar. This is Ma Jianzhong. Okay, in Qing Dynasty. So, in his book, he proposed two kinds of means, two kinds of final particles concerning information structure. And one is called the 传信助字. Okay, literally, 信 means real or true, meaning conveying information that is related to the truth of the information. And the other type is called the 传疑助字. 疑 means questioning or doubt. So the second type is related to the questioning. And more details will be discussed later on. And following that, there are also many Chinese scholars had a discussion about the evidentiality, both in the traditional Chinese grammar studies and also the contemporary linguistics in China. I will not mention all the names here. So the theoretical framework and main hypothesis are as follows. Firstly, I'm going to take the strongest position of cartography as the main theoretical background of this study, in which Qinghui and Rizzi claimed that if some language provides evidence for existence of a particular functional head and its projection, then that head and the projection must be present in every other language, whether the language offers overt evidence for it or not. So from this perspective, the answer for the question, like whether all languages have the grammatical category of evidentiality, is obvious. That is, yes, all languages have, according to this strongest position. And for the second question, yes, Chinese also have this grammatical category. And the second proposal I have already mentioned, I will skip it here. Okay, so the hypothesis, I have two major hypotheses. That is the one. And the second hypothesis is that the split evidentiality hypothesis. I mean that following the tradition of cartographic study established by Pollock, Rizzi, Cinque, Belletti, etc., and also the research strategy, what I named as a zoom in and a zoom out, I discussed in several of my books, which matches today's topic, zoom na cartographia. Okay. I hope this is not stupid pronunciation from my side. So what I named as a zoom in, zoom out research strategy, we suggest that when observing the evidentiality by zooming, we could get a detailed map with more detailed information of the split evidentiality, the assumption which I call the split evidentiality hypothesis, consisting two aspects. The first one is while evidential is an independent grammatical category, syntactically it is not one head, sorry, there's one word missing, important. It is not a one head, but a zone or field of evidentiality consisting of a set of more specific evidentials. And the split evidentials are distributed in different layers, conveying different kind of evidentiality information. So these are the major hypotheses. Then let's move on to evidentiality in Chinese from the cartographic perspective. And major concerns are about the three aspects. The first one is the Chinese particles. The second one is the adverbs and adverbials. And the third one is other related issues. Firstly, Chinese evidential particles. And I would like to begin with classic Chinese. We think that in classical Chinese shows a two-term system of evidentiality according to the very first grammar book of Chinese, Ma Shi Wen Tong Ma's grammar. Okay, in this book, he discussed about major two types. And in the first type, he also discussed the two subtypes of the evidentialities marked by ye and yi, respectively. Ye, particle, sentence final particle ye, and the sentence final particle yi, and the sentence final particle ye is related to inferential type, inferential information, and the yi is related to what is said is true or has been seen to be true. So it's there are two major systems according to Ma. And he discussed the examples, for instance, the yi, er, yi, and the direct or reported yi, that is has been seen, is evidence of the facts, and that yi is marked with based on the inference or reasoning. And he discussed the examples. I'm going to explain the examples here. The two examples can be showed here, like 子谓少敬美矣，又敬善也. Okay, so I will explain here. Like the follows, maybe, yeah. 子 means Confucius. Confucius, you know, Confucius, the master Confucius, yeah, Confucius, the philosophy, Confucius. So what is saying here is that the Confucius said to somebody else that 少敬美矣. Shao is a person's name. So Shao is pretty handsome. So, and this sentence is ended with the ending yi. Why? Because Ma explained, because the beauty of the person or the handsomeness of the person can be seen. Therefore, you use the ending of a yi. And this sentence is followed by another sentence at the 又敬善矣. And also, he's not only pretty or handsome, but also very kind, very friendly. So by saying that Shao is very kind, actually it's a judgment. It's based on reasoning, because you actually not really can see with your eyes is kind. You have to make a judgment or reasoning. Therefore, the sentence is ended with a ye. So these are the two systems. So one is ended with a yi, the other one is ended with a ye, showing that the Chinese, classical Chinese actually did have the system of the evidentiality, and it is a two-term system. Either it is inferred or it is being seen or factual things. And also, he discussed about multiple particles used together. And then we cartographers love this story about multiple particles, because that is a clear evidence showing the hierarchy, right? Hierarchical arrangement of it. And in the doctrine of the mean, or the doctrine of the golden mean, that is also a representative classical work text in Chinese. Again, Confucius said, okay, Confucius said that 顺其大孝也与. Shun is a very famous ancient king. The king Shun. 大孝, xiao means the filial piety to his parent, right? So he's very kind to his parent, obeying to his parent. And after this sentence is ended with the two particles. The sentence particles, one is a ye, the other one is a yu. Why ye? Because whether he's morally good is not can be seen with your eyes. You have to see it with your reasoning, or therefore it is a ye. And after that, there is a particle yu that is an exclamative particle, which means that exclamative particle is following the evidential particle. So based on this, I give a hierarchy like an evidentiality, and followed by fourth exclamative here. And we can even find the triple use of the sentence final particles in ancient classical Chinese. And here we have not only example, but also discussions given by Ma. Let's look at the examples first. Here we have an example. 泰伯其可谓至得矣. Okay, 泰伯again is the person's name. And also this sentence is judge his moral quality. And the sentence is saying that the Mr. Taibo is extremely very high morality. That is very, very high quality of morality. So this sentence is followed by three particles. The first one is ye, as we said, the same for the same reason, ye. And also by yi and yi. The first yi is to emphasize. Although it is based on reasoning and inference, but it is true. So emphasize it is true. And the last yi is to add a confirmation. What I'm saying, I believe it is true. Okay. So these two words, yi, used together to emphasize the truth of the sentence. So then let's go back to the discussion given by Ma. And Ma says that whenever triple particles co-occurred for confirming the truth or certainty, the sentence must end up with the particle yi. So when you have multiple evidential particles, you have to end up with the E, YE. I explained that E is expressing the certainty in a high degree, something like what we can see, or something that is for sure with a high degree. Okay. So more examples like multiple use of the particles. And after E, you can also use the Zai. Zai is kind of exclamative marker, which means that emotional or exclamative markers are following emphasize evidentiality. That gave us more evidence for the hierarchy of it. And also, when interrogative particle co-occur with the confirmative particle, that is interesting, okay, have some more pragmatic implications. When these two used together, then the interrogative particle conveying questioning meaning will be used as the last ending of it. So the examples like this, 有能一日用其力于人矣乎? The meaning is, could he possibly do something kind or nice at least one single day? Okay, so this is a question, but not really question. Actually, use question to convey the information of the negation. And that the interrogative particle is used after the evidential article E, and give us the hierarchy of the evidence, confirm, and also interrogative. And then we have Hu Zai, that is interactive after emotional. 为人有己而由人乎哉, meaning is being kind is determined by yourself. You can make a decision whether you will be kind to others or not. It's not determined by others. Okay, so the last sentence is by others Hu Zai, meaning is that determined by others? Okay, and the sentence is ended with the firstly interactive, and then followed by exclamative. Why exclamative following interactive? Because exclamative tells us actually this is not question at all. It is something we know the answer, but we use the interactive form to express our judgment. Okay, so we get the rank of interactive followed by force, exclamative or emotional. Then we got a whole picture of the hierarchy like this. That is evidential, inferred evidential, spectral or confirmed evidential, and confirmed or emphasized evidential, followed by interactive, and followed by force, exclamative or emotional, represented by this sentence of final particles illustrated in this chart. And very interestingly, Ma also had a very nice discussion that is in the Western languages, and the ending of the verbs change according to the moods, because there is a mechanism of changing verb forms. There's no such kind of things like sentence final particles in Western languages. But the reason why Chinese has a sentence final particle is due to the complement, the lack of verb inflections. That is what discussed by Ma's grammar. And the idea is that the sentential particles in Chinese function the same as the verb inflections in European languages. And that go back to the hypothesis of one. That is, so we have a unified functional hierarchy, which is isomorphic to the different languages in different ways. So Chinese behave differently from those languages like Tariana in Brazil, but the fundamental rules are the same, and the functional hierarchy should be the same. So this is the first part about the ancient Chinese. And then let's move on to the second part, that is Mandarin Chinese. And that's this syntactic map we just mentioned applies in Mandarin Chinese. Notice that the system consisting of sentence final particles such as yi, ye we mentioned is replaced by a new system of sentence final particles, completely new system of sentence final particles in Mandarin Chinese. We do not use ye, yi anymore, but we have a new system of sentence final particles. And there are some studies on a very interesting language textbook called the Old China, 老几大, Old China, a textbook for Chinese written for Korea people to study Chinese in ancient time. And in this book, the change or historical change of the sentence final particle was discussed. I'm not going into the details of it. And in contemporary linguistics, the modern linguists also discussed about the sentence final particles from different perspectives. I'm going to illustrate some of them, which is highly related to our research of cartography. And among them, I would like to specifically mention the study done by Zhu Dexi, a late professor from Peking University. And Zhu Dexi in 1982 discussed about the three groups of sentence final particles as follows. The group one is related to tense, what he called the tense, and later on, most people think that is aspects. Anyways, tense or aspects related to sentence final particles like le, ne, 来着. And group two is related to interrogative and imperative, like ne, ma, ba, the second ne. And group three is related to attitude or emotional expressions, like a, o, mo, ne, 3, and ba. And I will go to the details, the detailed examples here. Some examples illustrated by Zhu. As I said, we cartographers like those multiple particles, so I just go directly to the multiple ones. Okay, here there is an example like 还小呢嘛, literally means still young. 呢 is an evidential, inferred evidential, like a 也. Ma is a force representing attitude. And 不早了吗? Le is evidential, aspectual evidence, evidential, followed by interrogative ma. Okay, and also 好好说呗. Bei is a combination of a ba and a, and the ba is a force for imperative, and the a is a force for attitude or emotional. And also 已经有婆家了呗. So we have le, evidential aspectual, and followed by ba, interrogative, and a, force. So then in this case, we have the following rank, following hierarchy, that is the verbal phrase, followed by evidential, aspectual, or confirmation, followed by interrogative and the force. And also more interestingly, Zhu, although he didn't do cartography, he didn't even do generative linguistics, but he concluded that among these three groups, the relative sequence is fixed. You cannot change. Although some of them may be missing. You can miss some of them, omit some of them. But as long as it occurs, the relevant order must be fixed. Of course, all the cartographers love this result. Okay. Then, so we integrating it into our terminology system. The hierarchy is as follows. That is evidence, tense aspect, and the interactive, and the force emotional. The compare between what we get from the classical Chinese. So the relative order is about the same. And I marked them with the different colors because to show you in a simplest way. So you can see classical Chinese and Mandarin Chinese have the same rank, same hierarchy. It's very beautiful, right? And the third part of it is the evidence from Chinese dialects. Chinese is a language famous for, you know, having lots of varieties of dialects. I don't have enough time for all the dialects, but just to pick up some of the dialects, and starting with my mother tongue, of course, okay, because that is something I can 100% sure, okay. My dialect is Jing dialect, or more specifically, Jiaocheng dialect. And the Jing dialect is a dialect spoken by Shanxi province in Mongolia, as well as some part of the Hebei province. Okay. Let's look at some examples from a Jing dialect, and discussed by Yang Yi, 2019. It's pretty recent research, okay, about the Yangquan dialect in Shanxi province. And you can find the multiple, again, I just pick up those multiple particles, sentence final particles. And very interestingly, there is an example about the lie. Lie, literal original meaning of lie is come. Come and go, come. But it is grammaticalized in many aspects in Chinese, both the Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and Chinese dialects. And here I just mentioned some of the interesting behaviors of lie. So lie can be actual particle. It can be a main verb lie, come. It can be an aspect marker. It can also be an affirmative evidentiality markers. So one lie actually marked a hierarchy, a grammaticalization of it. It's very interesting. And there is a sentence given by Yang in Yangquan that is 今早起下雨来来. You use double lie, come, okay, double lie. So meaning 今 means today, 早起 morning, 下雨 rain, meaning it was raining this morning. It was raining this morning. This fact statement is followed by two particles, two lie, marking different functions, okay, conveying different meaning. And also in this dialect, they can also say 谁来来. 谁 means who come. But here, both come do not mean come. Okay, this come is not come. This come has already been grammaticalized as a kind of marker of a grammatical category. And the first one is related to aspect. And the second one is related to a kind of a confirmation. A confirmation. So 我来来 means 谁来来 means who come, but maybe ask who did that, who wrote the paper. Okay, the short form who, just the who. Okay, who did that? Who wrote the paper? Okay, who visited Beijing? Who 来来 okay, that is it. And 我来来 means me. It was me who blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's very interesting fact. And so the hierarchy is that the evidential marker followed by interrogative. And this can be proved by my own mother tongue. 教程 dialect is similar, a little bit different. We can say that 谁来了 meaning the same thing. Who? It was whom who did the blah, blah, blah. Okay, and the answer can be 我来吗? Okay, so the same is true. And it can even be shortened as 我吗? It's me. Okay, me followed by particle. Okay. So, and we can even have 3 particles in 教程 dialect. 是的了吗? 是的了哇? 是 means true. It is true. And the true followed by 3 particles. First one is inferred. And also related to the focus, probably the multiple, okay? And then followed by le, means a confirmation or emphasize. And then followed by wa. 是的了吗? Question. Is that true? Is that true? And so I'm not quite sure. I need you to give me a feedback whether it is true. Okay. So then, as you can see, again, we got the hierarchy, yellow followed by blue and followed by green, which is compared to the classical Chinese and Mandarin Chinese, same hierarchy. Very beautifully presented. So then we can have a unified map, roughly like follows. Yeah. Evidentiality type 1, evidentiality type 2, and followed by interrogative and followed by force. Notice that, as having been discussed by many scholars, that the grammatical categories morphologically realized post-verbally usually is the mirror image of their pre-verbal correspondence. It means that the above map actually can be reversed as follows. That is a force, interrogative, and blah, blah, and the evidentiality and the IP, which is perfectly matches Rizzi's left periphery hierarchy. With the only difference that there is a detailed explanation or description of the evidentiality. So here comes the second hypothesis. That is, while evidential is an independent grammatical category, syntactically, it is not one head, but a zone of evidentiality consisting of a set of more specific evidentials, marked as yellow here, okay, which can be understood as a split of the evidentiality and distributed in different layers, conveying different kinds of evidentiality information. So these are the 2 major hypotheses. I will very quickly look at the other issues because of the time. Time is limited, so I will not go to the more details, but very quickly. In Chinese, except for the particles, we also have the adverbial expressions. Like Kang 2020 discussed the Chinese adverbial evidentialities from cartographic perspective and suggested a hierarchy among the adverbial evidentials and related functional heads as follows. And he discussed the 3 levels of it. The first level is about the domain, and the second level evaluation. The third level is canonical evidentials. And showed it this way. In a shell structure picture, you have the core information and about the information of information. That is the shell. And in this shell, you have the domain, evaluation, evidentialities, which means actually the evidentiality really can occur in different layers, both in CP domain and the IP domain. And also there are lots of interesting things in Chinese evidentiality, such as things related to sensory evidentiality, which I haven't discussed yet. It is well known that typical evidentiality can be direct or indirect related to sensory logical reported. And the sensory-related expressions in Chinese include you can use it as a predicate of the main clause, like a 眼见. I saw with my eyes, I heard with my ears, I heard what is said, 眼见耳听听说 blah blah blah. Okay, or in Chinese we also have 耳听为虚，眼见为实. Ear here is untrue, I saw is real. That is literal meaning seeing is believing. And it can also be used as an adverbial evidential marker, like the blue one marked. So you have a subject predicate as a complete preposition, and then there is one adverbial expressions related to sensory inserted in between, like 听着 means with by listening. Okay, 看着 means by seeing, by visual. 闻着 means by smelling. Okay, or 摸着 means by touching, and 踩着 means by stepping on. So we have different sensory expressions used as adverbial. But what I'm interested in actually is the follows. So there is a case study about the 见来. 见 means saw. 来 is a particle, what I just mentioned, from come. A particle grammaticalized. This case is interesting for us because 2 reasons. One, it is a visual type we haven't discussed above. Secondly, it is related to the movement showing its direction of grammaticalization. So 你见来来 means did you see it? In this sentence, 来 is really a main verb, come. Sorry, saw. 见 is saw, followed by 2 particles come. And in the second example, you have 见来你会不会说英语呢? That is spoken by dialect, in my dialect, meaning who knows whether you can speak English or not. And beginning with the 见来, literally saw, 来 particle, followed by the whole proposition. And the movement or grammaticalization is perfectly proved what Roberts and Rosso 2003 suggested, that the diachronic movement of a given morpheme, possibly tracked over many centuries through successive reanalysis, is always upwards in the structural hierarchy of functional categories. The same is true for Chinese. And there are a lot of the evidence to prove this, like in Ming Dynasty, in ancient Chinese, we have 2 types of it, like 你见 blah blah 来, and here is a saw, the main verb saw. And also 经时事语达人真实事 则曰见来 meaning is, well, in the spoken language, when people are talking about the real things, what is really true, then you use 见来. Use with, because 见 means saw with your eyes. Okay, so that is essentially related. So, and also there is a symmetry between see and saw. See means to look at, 看. 看 means to see or to look at. And 见, saw, the past, has a past time meaning. Okay, the two words 看来, 见来 are grammatical but behave very differently. And you can say that 见来它会不会来呢 in the interrogative sentence, but you cannot say 看来它会不会来呢 Okay, 他见来会不会来呢 but 他看来会不会来呢 It's not okay. All right, so the idea is that actually the evidential markers can be grammaticalized from the main verb to the evidentials. Then I'm going to conclude my talk as follows. Here I summarize. Chinese doesn't require evidential markers all the time, but evidentials in Chinese can be expressed by particles, adverbials, as well as some other syntactic methods. And evidentiality can be explained unifiedly with other languages from a cartographic perspective, combining with the studies of Rizzi and Qinghui. And so I'm taking a kind of zoom-in strategy. By zooming, you look at the split evidentiality in more details, or in Qinghui's hierarchy, evidentiality actually can be split into different layers. So two hypotheses were discussed. One is isomorphic mapping hypothesis. The other one is the split evidentiality hypothesis. So the last is the question number 3 I asked in the very beginning of my talk. That is, why is the study of evidentiality important? Well, it is important because, firstly, the study of it helps us set up a more accurate understanding about the unified syntactic explanation for information structure and their various realization in different languages. And it is also helpful for the detailed description of the syntactic cartography. And more importantly, it is helpful for us to understand the two functions of the human language. One is language is the most important means of the thought, or language is the system of the thought, according to Chomsky. And the other one is many people understand the language as a most important means for communication. But when you communicate, you need to convey the information, and the information structure will be realized and corresponding to the structure inside internally with the mental part. And isomorphic hypothesis can help us to explain the relation and then help us to understand the Galilean challenge discussed by Professor Noam Chomsky. And that's all for my talk. And thank you so much. Comments and suggestions are welcome. Thanks again for the invitation and for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Susan, for this excellent lecture. I am sure cartographers and typologists enjoyed your speech a lot. Now we are going to read some of the questions we have received from our audience. And if you have questions, please just type them on our YouTube chat or send an email to tescari@unicamp.br.
Thank you very much, Professor Susan, for this very illuminating talk. I believe our audience loved this talk. And let me start by asking the people here in the room. If there is someone in the room, I mean in the Zoom room, who wanna ask a question to Professor Fuzhen Si, you can just type the question on the chat or turn your camera and microphone and ask her directly. So is there anyone here in the room who wanna ask her first?
In Chinese, we say that the first chair.
So I will, for the share, I will start asking you a question if I may. Yeah, so I will start. I loved the talk a lot. And my question is, as for your split evidentiality approach, whereby you are zooming in the evidential zone, very cartographic, and placing the evidentiality above, if I got it right, above the IP and below int in the left periphery, if I got you right. I have the following comments, and after that a question. It follows somewhat a general trend, a general tendency in syntactic cartography in locating some categories generally expressing linguistic attitudes and information structure like features in general in the CP domain, if I got you right. Let me now try to play the devil's advocate role. One of the founding works of syntactic cartography, and you mentioned it, Chinque's work, places a bunch of categories expressing speakers' attitudes in the upper part of the IP domain, but is still in the IP domain. This is, for instance, the case of speech act, mood, evaluatives, miratives, and evidentiality in his original proposal, and also epistemic modality. Now, if I got you right, you are placing the evidential zone in between the IP and between the CP layer. If I got you right, it is above the IP and perhaps above thin in the CP domain. Should we treat evidentiality in the same way agreement is treated in mainstream minimalism? I mean, as a C-like feature, as a complementizer-like feature, which is inherited by the inflectional domain, or should we perhaps assume that it is an inflectional, it is still an inflectional zone only connected to the CP by means of displacements, by means of movement? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful question. It's a very good question. And to answer this question, I would like to share the screen once again. Yes. Because you're concerned with the location of the evidentiality. And in my slides, there is a discussion. I didn't actually go to the details, but I think that evidentiality can occur at two levels. One is in CP domain, such as the sentence final particles can function in this domain. And also probably some sentential adverbials as well. And also the evidentiality can also occur in IP domain for instance, some inflectional ending markers in other languages probably should be related to this layer. And also discussions by Kang Xin. He studied the evidentiality adverbials, and most of the examples are related to both IP level and the CP level. Of course, you can move from the lower space to the higher space, as I said by quoting Roberts R&R 2003, saying that actually there is a kind of hierarchy. You start from the very lower level and to the middle and to the higher level. So it is maybe it is possible for evidential expressions that can locate it at this several different levels, at least the IP level and the CP level, 2 different levels.
Okay. Can I insist with you a little, please? Yeah.
Yes, sure, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very illuminating talk. I enjoyed it a lot. As for the sentence final particle, sentence final particles type of evidentiality, I mean the one you are placing in the CP domain because they are linearized at the end of the sentence in those languages you are working on. How does this series of categories, projections,
Sorry, I cannot hear you now. I don't know whether others have same problem. Or
no,
only...
I can't know. I can't hear Achilles.
I guess his internet has problem.
Now, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me fine now?
Right now, yes.
Right now, can you hear me?
Repeat the question?
Okay, I will repeat my question. Sorry for insisting on this specific topic because I enjoyed it a lot. It's very cartographic. As for the sentence final particles type of evidentiality, I mean, those you were placing in the CP zone, in the CP area, how does this series of categories and projections end up in the CP field by means of external merge, namely being directly merged in the CP area, or they go to those specific propositions by means of internal merge or displacement? Sorry for asking you.
Thank you for your question. In fact, this is your question is directly related to my another research a long time ago. I had several talks about that topic because, you know, about the question you are concerned with, the issue you are concerned with, actually there are different point of views. There are 2 possible explanations. So one explanation is a movement. The other one is a directly merged. And if I prefer, actually, to be honest, I prefer direct merge. For the reason that 2 reasons. The first reason is direct merge is more economic. That is a theoretical reason. But if you don't move, if you direct merge, then how do you explain that is equals to the highest level of CP? You need to explain that. And my explanation is a mirror image, actually. So there is a spine, like 2 ears. So left preference here, okay. And the final particle is here. So they are the same level. 2 ears, 2 eyes are the same level. So it doesn't matter whether the linearly is before or after verb. We are concerned with the hierarchy, not the linear order.
Ah, okay.
So that is my proposal in my another paper. So, but the hierarchy should be the same.
The same, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for this clarification issue. Well,
interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone here in the room who wanna ask a question to Professor Fuzhen Si? You can type the question on the chat or turn on your camera and microphone and ask Professor Si directly. So if no one wants to ask, and if you don't mind, I will ask you another question. In the meantime, if you, of course, don't mind. Yeah. So by the time being, the other colleagues can prepare their questions to ask after Professor Fuzhen Si answer. Just a minute. Yeah, let me take my notes. Well, Professor Si, at the beginning of your talk, you told us you would be treating evidentiality in a broad sense, in a broader sense. So the broad definition of evidentiality. Assuming this broad definition of evidentiality, wouldn't weak somehow the general cartographic enterprise, in as much as other categories do express speakers' attitudes towards the propositional contents? I mean, epistemic modality, for instance, do express speakers' attitudes. And since we have this overlapping of features, wouldn't it somehow weaken the general cartographic endeavor? Yeah, I'm here again playing the devil's advocate role because I enjoyed the work a lot.
That's a very good question. Very good question. Actually, it's an inspiring question, and that is also what I have been thinking of. Because there are a lot of studies about the speaker-oriented studies or listener-oriented, and also the attitudes, and some even propose there is a separate attitude P or something like that. I think that the detailed classification of this, whether attitude should be put under evidentiality or it should be marked separately, we can discuss further. In certain classification, I am not quite sure yet, actually, to be honest. Certain classification I'm quite sure, but some of them we need to see which classification is more meaningful in terms of different languages. We need to look at more languages, do it cross-linguistically, so that we can see whether it is necessary to put it separately, and also the sequence of the hierarchy. There are also discussions, even for topic and focus in left periphery, there are also different views. I think the important thing I want to emphasize here is that I think there is independent evidentiality category, and it is a zone consisting of several things. But whether attitude should be here and whether the relative order is just like what I put there, and that can be under discussion, I think. But very good question, actually. That is also a kind of issue in my mind, theoretically. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Susan.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Let me see if someone sent a question by email. Just a minute, please. I will check it. No. Well. Well, if there is no more questions, I guess, Sandra, we can stop here. Would you like to say some words, Sandra, please?
Yes, I want to thank you, Professor Susan, for having accepted our invitation and for your great talk about the cartography, Chinese cartography. And I would also thank for the audience, to thank the audience in Brazil and abroad for being here with us today. Thank you so much and see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Susan, for having accepted our invitation and for this very great, brilliant cartographic talk. I'd like to thank the audience here together with us on Zoom, and also people abroad on the YouTube. I also would like to announce our next speaker, Professor Yosh Wendell from Canada University of International Studies. His lecture is going to take place on May 12th at the same time, and his talk is entitled Exploring the Cartography of Reason Expressions. To finish it, as Professor Fuzhen Si is used to saying, together we can make some progress.
Yes.
So, long life to synthetic cartography. And thank you very much, Professor Susan, for supporting our Zoom na Cartografia. Thank you
so much. Thank you once again for your invitation and kindness, and I hope to discuss with you about other things later on.
Yeah, it is very important. Thank you, Professor Susan. Thank you, Sandra. And thank you, colleagues from China who are here together with us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.